Welcome to Ancestral Health Today, evolutionary insights into modern health.
Welcome to Ancestral Health Today. I'm Todd Becker, and we're talking today with Miki Ben-Dor about how our Paleolithic ancestors ate and lived and what it means for modern humans. And Miki received his PhD in paleoanthropology when he was 67 years old, which is my age, and he's since made a name for himself publishing and speaking for both academic and popular audiences. His paper, The Evolution of the Human Trophic Level During the Pleistocene, became the most cited paper in 2021 in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. He's presented his work at numerous conferences, including several times at the Ancestral Health Symposium. And his recent book, Live Paleo Style, it takes a fresh look at how the mismatch between our evolutionary origins and the circumstances of modern society manifest not just in diet and health, but more broadly in our social and emotional life. So today, we'll dive into the paleoanthropological evidence that humans evolved as hunters and meat eaters, and meat remains the food we're best adapted to eat for health. And as you'll hear, the evidence takes many different forms, including archeological, anatomical, physiological, and ecological findings. But we'll go beyond diet to consider cultural and behavioral implications of our background as hunter-gatherers and what that suggests for increasing human happiness and flourishing. So welcome to Ancestral Health Today, Miki.
Thank you. It's a big pleasure for me. Ancestral Health was the first place where I lectured in the United States in 2012 or 11, I'm not sure.
Yes, 2012,
yeah,
I think.
I have very warm feelings
that.
towards yes. Yeah.
Well,
in Harvard,
So Miki, before we dive into your research, can you tell us a little bit about how you got interested in this? Because I understand you came somewhat late in life to this interest in human origins and ancestral diet, and you were actually trained as an economist, and you worked in the corporate world. So what explains that transition? What got you interested in this second career in paleoanthropology and also in the paleo diet?
Well, I started looking up to hunter-gatherers as a model when I was in university doing my BA in economics. And I noticed the difference between me and my wife in navigating, in finding things. And I related that to our genetic inheritance as hunter-gatherers. And when I retired, I retired at 52, I decided not to work anymore. And then I don't remember what I thought about it before or after, but actually it's unnatural for humans to work for such a long time in a 6 to whatever 8 hours shifts, and getting paid for it. So the whole thing looked a little bit, and I had just accumulated enough wealth to be able not to work. Mm-hmm. So I decided, why should I? Actually, I was working to increase my inheritance, the money that I will leave to my kids. And I thought it was enough at that time. So I decided that not to work. And I was looking for things to do. And came across a professor at Tel Aviv University who was very interested in hunter-gatherers. He was an archaeologist, but the archaeologists take a lot of, analogy from hunter-gatherers of today. So I went to some of the courses.
Oh, so you were interested in this, in the archaeology and in the lifestyle, but was there any connection with diet? Did you change your diet at some point to be?
No, actually, no.
Yeah. No?
Okay. It started when I after about 2 years of going to university as a free listener, I decided to write a book. about what I did, about actually that living work is an option. I don't think it was an option for everybody, but some people that can afford it should look at it as an option. And I started writing the book, and for research, I heard about paleo. So for research, I started researching it myself. And I was writing, I had a very terrible ADD. I couldn't write for a long time or do any work for a long period without Ritalin. And then I did the research and I found out that Ritalin or ADD and gluten sensitivity are associated. So I stopped eating gluten, and like after maybe a few days actually, I threw away my Ritalin and I was working without Ritalin. So I realized that I was eating in the wrong way all my life. And I became more interested in the nutrition side than in the sort of mental side of the mismatch.
Okay, so there was some personal experience that made you think about diet and human adaptations, right? From your own personal experience with giving up gluten.
Right.
Yeah. So let's dive into sort of the key themes that come out of some of your research, which I think is really interesting. But I want to start with the fact that we are primates. We're descended from primates. But some of our early primate ancestors, like modern, apes and gorillas and chimpanzees, they ate a mainly plant-based diet, and somehow somehow later on the Homo sapiens and before that Erectus became meat eaters. So what happened there? How did we go from plant eaters to meat eaters? And what are the factors that drove that evolution?
Well, apparently there was already like 7 million years ago, 6 million years ago, some environmental pressure that caused some of us to go leave the trees and start looking for food on land. I'm not sure what it was. I don't think anybody knows exactly what it was. So we became like, let's call it, one of the species like Australopithecus, which is well known, was actually getting food from the terrestrial sources, but most probably from vegetal sources. And then there was a change, and more area became savanna in Africa, and savanna carry more fauna than non-savanna. So apparently these Australopithecus split. Part of it went to exploit more vegetal source food, and the other half, which is actually Homo habilis, started to consume more fauna, not fauna, but more animal food. Probably starting by just taking stones and getting marrow from bones that were left by other predators. And then becoming more and more sophisticated in that, and starting to get some meat, or maybe do some, scavenging, but a little bit more aggressive scavenging. Okay, so you actually make the other predators run away. And it started developing stone tools. Stone tools first appear associated with meat consumption, with more meat consumption. And this is how we know that they started to, and of course you find the bones, fossilized bones in
And this is around Homo habilis around 2 million years ago or so? Or when did this start to happen? 2.5 million years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
About 2.5 million years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
2 million years ago, 1.8, 1.9, we start seeing another Homo erectus, which was much bigger than Homo habilis, had different teeth structure, much smaller teeth than Homo habilis. And that means that his diet became much more condensed and much higher quality, let's say. And when you say quality, high quality diet is really, in the end, less fibrous, because humans cannot, exploit a lot of fiber. And you see much more bones and much more, and it's quite clear today, although not everybody, whatever I say here, I must say, in the beginning, whatever I say here is not a consensus and it's not a unitary opinion. I have my own opinion. It's not that I don't have partners to that opinion, I do. But it's not like, a total consensus. But my interpretation and other people's interpretation, especially the people who actually dig the sites in Olduvai Gorge, is that Homo erectus was a carnivore and a hunter, and that in the sites you find many very large animals. So this is let's say, the way that we got into this niche.
So let's have you recite some of the evidence that really supports our origins as carnivores. And I know you've talked about physical, anatomical features in the body, our digestion, energetics, things like this. What were some of the pieces of evidence that were most convincing to you?
To me, the physiological aspects are most convincing, because this is something that, it's almost impossible to interpret in other ways. When you go to archeological sites and find the bones, one can always say, yeah, but plants don't preserve as well, so they must have eaten a lot of plants. But when you see that our stomach acidity, still today, after 10,000 years of agriculture, is still the stomach acidity of not only a predator, but a scavenger. So even more than a predator. And the reason it is a scavenger is because humans were kind of a scavenger, hunter-scavenger, because we took the meat and the fat to a central site. It's not what other carnivores usually do, especially social carnivores. They just get around the prey and they eat it. But we took the prey and we guarded it, because the large prey we consumed over a few days or weeks, depends on the size. So we actually were scavenging, like scavengers, on that prey. So we needed the high acidity to fight the pathogens. So this kind of, and then there is another very, something that you will never associate unless you are in this business or biology, and this is the structure of our fat cells. So we have many small fat cells, and other animals may have other, what we have, or they have smaller but larger, smaller number but larger size fat cells. And that exists. Now, the researchers, in this case, found out that the animals that have smaller fat cells but larger and higher number are all carnivores. So they write, and this was in 1985, they wrote it means that humans were actually carnivores. Now, nobody picked it up at that time, but this is, for me, it's the most, and what, the other things that I'm guided, and this is probably because I'm an economist by education. Another thing that guides me very much is the energetics.
Yeah, say more about that. I think that's really interesting. Talk about the energetics.
Yeah, energetic. Look, energy is the coin of evolution, or the coin of life. Okay, this is follow the money. So in evolution, I would say follow the energy. And if you look even today, or hunter-gatherers, recent hunter-gatherers, because this is something we could not measure archaeologically, the energetic return, net return on hunting is in the tens of thousands of calories per hour. So some say, in some cases it's 60,000, in other cases it's 10,000, but it's in that range. The return on plants, on gathering plants, is around 1,500 calories. So it's less than 10 times, or more than 10 times, that of hunting.
Yeah, and the plants during the Paleolithic were not the plants we buy in the supermarket today, right? There was a lot more fiber. There was a lot less available sugars. We have these rich, sweet.
I tell you, they lose a lot of calorie by the preparation.
Yeah.
Because you need to prepare, most of the plants you need to prepare. Because we are not talking about fruits. Even fruits is maybe 3, 5, 7,000 calories per hour. It doesn't get to the return on hunting. But it's not fruits. You have to prepare. The sun, for instance, in Namibia, yeah, they actually, I think Magongo nut provides maybe 50% of their nutrition. But just to prepare it, they spend so much time and energy that the original return becomes much, much less. So this is one of the reasons why gathering just doesn't provide. Now, this is not by chance. It's just because we are adopted to it, okay? For if you take primates, if you take, let's say, a chimpanzee, the ratio will not be the same. Because for them, they will not get the 10,000, because for them to hunt, they have to run like crazy. Yeah? We've developed tools to do it. So we are adapted in a way. It reflects a basic adaptation to hunting as opposed to gathering. Now, why
the tools, the ability to run long distances, we could hunt in a way that other primates couldn't. So that gave us a way to adapt. But then also our bodies changed, right? So can you say what's the evidence from our teeth and our digestive tracts and our jaws that show how this transition to hunting affected our bodies?
Yes, I already talked about the habilis, the difference in the teeth between the habilis and the erectus. We have teeth. Somebody built a machine, I think it cost like $1 million, one of the researchers. And the machine was like chewing. It could chew automatically, and he could measure all the pressures here and there and that and that. And he came to the conclusion that human teeth were meant to chew meat because it holds the meat. Otherwise, if you take a Homo habilis teeth, when it chew, the teeth are flat, so the meat escapes to the sides, and you cannot cut the meat. But we have tips on the teeth, cusps it's called, that hold the teeth so we can actually cut it. So this is one of the adaptations. The classic one, which everybody is talking about, is the adaptation of the gut, of course. And when you compare our gut with a chimpanzee's gut, you find that the colon, our colon is something like 77%, if I remember correctly, my calculations, shorter, or the volume is smaller than that of a chimpanzee. And chimpanzee eats a high quality diet. It's not like a chimpanzee is not a cow. Chimpanzee eat fruit. And fruit is relatively high quality, but still it needs a lot of space, a lot of volume to be able to ferment the fiber and to get the energy from the fiber. So our gut is built in a different way. We have a small colon, but a very large, relatively speaking, very large, small intestines. And so we evolved away from our ability to extract energy from fiber. And we evolved to an ability to extract energy from fat and protein. So yes, we are not, the gut is not built completely similar to that of carnivores, but still it's much, much different than other animals that consume plants.
Yeah, while we're on the topic of the efficiency of the digestive tract and the ability to get the energy from meat as opposed to needing this large gut for digesting fibrous material and using the gut flora to do that, where do you place the invention of fire and cooking in this? Because this book by Richard Wrangham, Catching Fire, he argued that Homo erectus had the benefit of fire, and that allowed us to, that allowed us to pre-digest kind of the calories, and so we again got more efficient absorption. So where do you place the role of fire in cooking in this story?
It's a good timing for that question, because I just sent for publication a paper that actually claimed that the first usage of fire was to protect against predators and to smoke meat rather than to cook. And I made all the calculations. Again, energy, okay? So when let's say you go cooking, so if the energy is the net energy of gathering plants is 1,400 calories per hour, what the cooking add, it's in the 10%. Okay? And by the way, most of the calculations are made on the potential caloric value of the plants, not on what actually we extract from the plant, which is less than the potential. But let's say at the full potential. So what is it? 40. So it increases your return from 1,400 to 1,540. So it's meager compared to.
So that's for plants. What about cooking meat? Does cooking meat enhance?
The same. No, even less. Okay. Yeah, even less, because if you take into account that cooking meat, the return is much of it is on fat. Okay, because the animals that they hunted contained 40-50% fat in caloric terms. So cooking fat adds something like 3% to the caloric value.
But it doesn't reduce the work that the intestine has to do and allow us to have a smaller gut, for example, to be able to have cooked meat versus No?
Look, it does, but by small
Marginal.
percentage.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe the actual chewing, the energy that you spend on chewing, maybe a little bit less. But people invented stone tools to cut meat 2.5 million years ago. So you don't have to cut. You can have it like a Chinese do. They cut it before they eat, not with the teeth.
Yeah.
Not so. Anyway, this is the paper. So if you look at the energetic, now the energy, let's say you hunt an elephant or whatever, and you get 60,000 calorie per hour. To protect the elephant or to protect the animal, yeah. If you don't protect, you will lose a lot of energetic return. And if you can smoke it and keep it, edible for a longer time, you return your energetic return on the cost of fire, because it costs to create fire. You have to go around, collect wood, and maintain it, etc., etc. So there is a cost, also energetic cost. By the way, there is a paper of a researcher who did measure how much energy is spent collecting wood, etc. And his conclusion is that it doesn't pay economically to cook. So it depends on the circumstances. Of course, some areas have more wood than others, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so this catching fire and the whole hypothesis, that cooking made us human is not correct. But I must say that we are not far away. My hypothesis is not far away from that. It was actually meant for nutrition, to keep us going. And yes, it demanded higher brain power to collect wood and make a fire. So it probably was one of the reasons that our brain grew, the actually making of fire. But it was not for cooking. Rangam, when he started, Rangam, by the way, is a vegetarian. And when he started, his theory was, or hypothesis was, that it allowed humans to eat plants. Later on, he changed it and he realized that meat was important. So it was meat and plant, and he made some experiments, cooking snakes or something. But his original was, and that I think he himself left this hypothesis. Anyway, cooking was not important. Not important? Not that it's not important today. And people cook, and people, I'm not saying that people don't cook. There's a lot of other meat becomes sweeter and easier to chew, and what have you. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want you to comment on another researcher, Lauren Cordain, who, as we all know, was one of the originators of the paleo diet. And he was looking at modern hunter-gatherers, like the Hazda. And he, his view looking at this was that, yes, meat plays a role, but there's quite a wide variability, and meat can be anything between 20 to 100% of the diet. Again, looking at modern hunter-gatherers. So what was wrong with this approach to and his conclusions?
I don't think anything is wrong with that approach. People can be. I don't claim that people cannot be healthy on plants, eating, a large portion of their diet is plants. Actually, what you see, if you go to the history, you see that at the beginning of agriculture, people suffered, but later on, they found ways to treat the plants and, to ferment and to do things like that, to prepare the plants And so they were quite healthy. My problem in that is that we don't do the preparation. Nobody does. Nobody ferment, the food before you eat it. We count on the food that we buy from companies that don't care about our health. Also, if you take, let's say, the Japanese, when they are in Japan, live to 90, 100. We have long life. Not all of them, but traditionally. But the tofu that they eat is fermented like crazy. And and of course, they are also adapted. And I think the adaptation does continue. So they had like 10,000 years to adapt to their diet. And when they come to the US, all of a sudden, they become sick. Why? Because they don't eat the traditional diet. The fact is that none of us knows what we are adapted to. Because we don't have a history. We are all, came from a non-traditional. My parents came from a non-traditional society. In traditional societies, people stay at the same place in a small community, and if they eat something and somebody becomes sick, they quite quickly find the association, and they stop it, or they prepare it differently, or they do. Ethiopians in Israel, we have the Ethiopians, the Jews, and they eat, instead of bread, they don't have wheat there, they have teff. And teff, they actually ferment it for 2 weeks before they make the bread. Now, I'm an economist, nobody will invest in 2 weeks worth of inventory just for nothing. So it means that it was very crucial for their health. And this is something that we don't do today. And we don't know our genetic composition in that respect. So I look at the whole mismatch, this template as a safety template. And the safest food is meat. You just cannot, you don't have to prepare it. You just can eat it raw. You can cook it. You can do whatever you want with it. So that's why
Let's go back to the Hazda, though, because I think you've pointed out that something that might have been overlooked by Cordain was he was assuming that modern Hazda were the same as ancient Hazda. But you've pointed out that the availability of large animals has changed. Can you say a little bit about your research showing that early Paleolithic ancestors hunted very large megafauna, and somehow that availability has changed over time?
First of all, this is even a consensus, is that we lost a lot of megafauna. Let's say megafauna is defined as weight higher than 100 pounds. But we lost a lot of mega herbivores. Mega herbivores are defined as animals in weight higher than 1,000 kilograms, so about 2,200 pounds. And for instance, we are adapted. First of all, you go to archeological sites and you see, and by the way, this is what I do. One of my research focus today is trying to produce papers that measure the decline in prey size or the change, but I find a decline between periods that were 400,000 or 500,000 years ago and 300,000 years ago. And at that time, this is called the Acheulean and and the Middle Paleolithic, let's say, or Middle Stone Age in Africa, and Early Stone Age, they call it. And I just had a paper, I'm also going to publish it hopefully soon, that in South Africa, in the Southern Africa, if you go to archaeological sites, you see less large mega herbivores than they were, in the 300,000 years than they were 500,000 years ago. And again, in the next period, which is you can actually identify, is about 40,000 years ago. What's called the later Stone Age in South Africa. You find another decline in mega herbivore. So mega herbivore declined. We found the same thing. We published the paper. We found it in the Levant, which is Israel, Syria, Lebanon. There are signs that it happened everywhere.
So this was due to human hunters essentially caused an extinction or a significant decrease in mega herbivores. We were the driver of that change. Is that the case?
That's another paper that I have.
Okay.
Trying to show, first of all, there is a consensus around the megafauna extinction, a wave of megafauna extinction started about 50,000 years ago. It's called the late Quaternary megafauna extinction. There's no argument that happened. There is a lot of debate whether humans contributed to it or not. And I think the debate is trending towards the one that think that human did it. Because wherever they came, they went, like America, Australia, some islands, you immediately saw a decline in this large herbivore. So I think there is still, one or two researchers that are fighting against it, but most I think agree with that interpretation.
A question then. So if we really did drive this extinction over tens of thousands of years or longer, did it have any implications for human evolution? Did it cause us to change or adapt because now we no longer had access to those very, very large animals and we had to start hunting smaller animals? Did that change anything about either our bodies or our practices?
Well, that's it. This is it. This is the unifying explanation that of all of human prehistory, all very phenomena that you wouldn't connect to each other. But when you put that precise decline and the adaptation to that decline, because we were hunters, and hunting is what brought us, evolution, the need to get food is the main motor of evolution, right? Because this is why you call the predators, carnivores, omnivores, herbivores. You divide animals by the way they eat. Yeah, because this is the main. So we were carnivores, and we were a special type of carnivores that, and this is the next paper that I'm almost completing it. We were a special kind of carnivore. We were a late joiner. We just joined this group of carnivores because we came, like I said, from Australopithecus that was not a carnivore. And we are late comers to this thing, and we could not adjust to consume large quantity of protein. So we can consume up to about 35% of our diet, 40% of our diet is protein, whereas other carnivores can consume 80% as protein, because you have to remove some the nitrogen from the body, etc., etc. So we don't have enough or large enough liver to turn it to urea. We don't have large enough kidneys to remove the urea. So this is it. Now, since we are hunters, we were like stuck with the need to obtain fat. Again, from an energetic point of view, because the alternative was to obtain carbohydrates from plants. But energetically, it doesn't pay. So we actually were like dependent on getting high-fat animals. And the first high-fat animals are the large animals. The larger the animal, the fatter it is. So we were dependent on large animals. This is why you find a lot of large animals in Homo erectus. Yeah. And then when the large animals started to decline in number, we found another strategy, and this is to hunt adult animals. Now, if you take a herd, the adults have more fat than the young and the old. The young use the fat. They don't have enough fat to build reserves because they have to grow. The old, the teeth are going bad, so they cannot feed well, so they don't have a lot of fat. So the adults have the fat. So we hunted the adults. And this is what you find. This is archaeologically very, very strong phenomenon. But this is crazy if you think about it. You are actually running after the most fit, the fittest group in the herd, right? They run faster, they are smarter, they are more alert. What predator will do that? Well, us, because we are dependent on the fat. But the problem is that this is the age group that contribute the most, or only the age group, that contribute to the growth of the herd, or to maintain the population of the herd. So the other thing that we did is to take and exploit only the fattiest part of the animals. And this is again something that you find in the archaeological side. So it's a wasteful kind of hunting, because you take an animal, but you exploit only part of it. Mm-hmm. And other predators do that as well, but they do it in times of plenty. For instance, in the Serengeti, okay, when there's a lot of gnu going around, lions don't eat the whole gnu. They eat the fattiest part and they go. But we do it in a time of shortage, because we need the fat. And at dry periods, for instance, the animals don't have a lot of fat. So actually, when they are most pressed, we add the pressure.
Yeah, this drive to eat the healthy prime adults, rich in fat, that drove these extinctions. But then at the end of it, we've depleted the megafauna and we're left with smaller animals. So how did that affect human life patterns and evolution after we had depleted those large animals?
You see, also the smaller animals are running faster, and they're smaller targets. So first of all, we had to develop the hunting weapons. And you see the hunting, the evolution. I have a paper on the evolution of hunting published. And you see that the hunting technology was aimed at smaller and smaller prey. One of the phenomena, and this is the latest phenomenon in terms of adjusting or adapting to hunt smaller, faster animals, is domestication of dogs. Okay, otherwise, why would people take dogs and have more mouths to feed than before? Dog is a very convenient aid, because they can digest protein to energy. They don't need the fat. So we hunt smaller animals, we take the fatty part, we give the dogs the protein, everybody is happy. It's a win-win situation. So we started domesticating dogs.
That's a great explanation for the coevolution of humans and dogs, that
Absolutely.
partnership.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's
By the way,
great.
it's probably started when we had a lot of protein waste in our camps, and they came around and took it. The next thing is to start to domesticate something else, to domesticate the animals. Instead of running around looking for them, if you can build a fence and keep them in, the energetic return gets much higher. And by the way, the domestication of animals always entailed increasing their fat content. This was one of the aims of the domestication according to Darwin. Later on, like 20, 30 years ago, there was a commission on how can we decrease the fat content of the animals because fat is so bad. This stupid thing.
The development of ruminants as herd animals and domestication of them, this was a natural outcome of the need to find fat and the lack of availability of wild animals, right? So the domestication.
Right, it just increased their energetic return. And the next stage is, it's the same, it's in parallel, it's domesticating plants. Now, some say that actually domesticating plants was to create food for the domesticated animals, but I'm not sure about that. But in any case, the end result is that the energetic return on domesticated plants and animals is quite high, and it's sufficient for humans.
Okay, so we can see our origins as hunters, as argument for meat. We've adapted to that, but evolution doesn't stop. And as you've pointed out, we can domesticate animals, we can domesticate plants. We've had 10,000 years as agriculturalists. If you're really a believer in evolution and the ability of humans to adapt, why not embrace the fact that we can be agriculturalists? And a lot of folks in the paleo community insist that we should be carnivores, that we're not that agriculture is too recent and that we cannot have adapted to agriculture. But what do you say about that? Have we been able to adapt at least partially to agriculture?
Tim Knox just published a book about all the good things that come with the ketogenic diet. And in there is a chapter that I participated in writing that described the history of health and nutrition. And he came up with a paper that in the Victorian times in England, the life expectancy was at certain time of the Victorian period, life expectancy was high and people were healthy. And if you go to Price, again, he found societies that were healthy and were eating plants. Of course, they were treating the plants in a traditional way. And they were, like I said, probably genetically adapted to the specific plants in their environment. I'm not saying that plants are unhealthy by definition. They are not. They are healthy if you prepare them properly, etc. And if you happen to be genetically adapted, which I was, for instance, to wheat, I was not. So plants are not the villain by definition. Carnivore, I believe everybody that can, and it's not easy, be a carnivore, should do it because it's just very safe and very efficient. And you feel, I do carnivore, and I feel great. I did paleo, I felt great, but I even felt better on carnivore. What can I tell you? This is like a personal anecdote. But I'm sure I share it with other carnivores. I read it. I see from testimony.
This is a good and maybe a point that's subtle for some people. You're not anti-plant. What you're saying is meat is the safest. We have the longest adaptation to that. That we do have some adaptation depending on genetics and also proper preparation. We can tolerate and benefit from plants. So it's not anti-plant. It's just more of a nuanced view here, I think. Right?
Look, there are the people that live 90 and feed only on plants. They live to 90 or 100. You know, you'll find the odd vegetarian or that everybody cited as an example. Some people are adjusted to it. So for instance, vitamin A. You need to have the genes to turn the plant form of the vitamin and to turn it to something that the body can use. Do you have the genes for that? How many genes do you have for that, etc., etc.? So nobody knows. We don't know. If you're healthy, fine, go ahead. Be vegetarian.
This is very interesting, but I want to, in this last part of our discussion, turn to the behavioral and cultural implications of our evolution from hunter-gatherers. And right. I think this book here that you've just written is very interesting in this respect. You've talked about the social structure of hunter-gatherers and how being hunters, we worked in small groups. I think you said 15 to 50 people. That was our society. What lessons can you draw from these origins in terms of our social structure, in terms of what makes us flourish and makes us happy in these societies?
Well, I've identified few things that I think still with us, probably genetically, that don't exist today. And did exist when we were hunter-gatherers. And this is equality, is the first, and autonomy is the second.
And now that came out of the necessity to hunt in groups, right? Because
absolutely.
We weren't individual hunters. We teamed up to get the large animals. And so how did that lead to this flatter, non-hierarchical organization, just coming out of the hunting and the gathering? What do you think drove that? I guess one other thing is if you look at other primates like gorillas and chimpanzees, there is some hierarchy. There's an alpha male,
absolutely.
Right? And he forces his will on the smaller guys, but that's different in the humans. So how does our mode of eating and hunting?
This is the
social structure. Yeah.
Right. The equality came from sharing, I think. So, like we said, humans specialized in hunting large prey. So when you bring the prey to the camp, everybody feed on the same prey, although you hunted it. Actually, if you follow hunter-gatherer groups, most of them don't allow the hunter to determine who gets what in the prey. He steps away. It comes from their concept that the hunter didn't do anything special. It's actually nature gave him the animal, and nature belongs to everybody. So the feeling of possession does not exist, or it is very weak. It exists, but very weak. And so this is a principle, a very, very important principle, and it allowed them to survive. Because hunting, one day you get an animal, and maybe a week you don't get an animal. So you need to share the big pile of energy that you caught, need to be shared with the group in order to allow the group to function. And also small groups can't exist if there is inequality in a group.
Is this true in other predators like canines and felines too? Do they also have this equality and sharing because they hunt in groups?
No. It's different degrees of equality. For instance, I think hyenas are much more equal than, let's say, lions. Dogs, there is the alpha male. It depends on the needs, you know. It's a different setup. The business of creating new generations and how you get the best genes to get transferred. It's a mechanism that we have different because we came from a different line of animals. So it's quite complicated, but it's not the same.
But going back to gorillas and chimpanzees, why do they have hierarchy? And what made us give that up?
They don't feed, you see, they don't share their food. They actually, each one eat their own food. They don't share, they don't even share it with the children after a certain age. So it's just not the same. They don't need to share because their food don't come in big packages sporadically. Okay? So they solve the problem of maintaining the group in a different way. Humans, because the big packages of energy come and not on a daily basis, they have to share.
Okay.
In order for everybody to survive. And sharing is just you have to be equal, to feel equal. This is also a fact. When you follow hunter-gatherers, you see there are no leaders. And I'm talking about.
You visited the Hadza yourself. You visited
other
groups, and you've seen this. Yeah.
Yes, I don't claim that I didn't spend a lot of time. I was like a tourist. So I read much more than I saw. So I can't claim to be, an expert trusting my own eyes. But I read so much about it that was written by people who lived among the Hadza. And there is no leader. There's no
leader. So you mentioned the equality, but it's not an enforced equality. It's kind of a natural equality, spontaneous. You also use the term autonomy. What's the evidence? What do you mean by autonomy? And in a way, this is kind of odd because you'd think these groups are so tight that nobody can feel totally independent. So where's your evidence that hunter-gatherers had this sense of autonomy that they could do what they wanted?
Yeah, I agree with you that there's some kind of contradiction there.
Yeah.
Because I think that what happens is that you have the options, but you don't take the options in a bad way. In other words, you use the option only in a positive way. Because if you took the options and hurt the group, it would hurt your chances of survival. So the notion of autonomy comes from observations of researchers that spend a lot of time with them. They don't even tell the children what to do. I'm not talking about telling other friends what to do. I'm talking about telling the children. There is a famous story about a group in India where the government decided to build them like fixed place to be. They didn't want them to. Governments don't like nomads. So they built them a place to live, and they wanted the kids to go to school. But the kids didn't go to school, so they came to the leader that they appointed. He didn't want to be a leader, but they decided they need one person to talk to. So they came to him and they said, why the kids are not going to school? You have to tell them to go to school. And he said, I can't tell them. I don't. If they want, they will go to school. If they don't want, they will not go to school. Or they gave them, they said, we are bringing new roofs for your village. Make sure that you collect a lot of, enough people to carry the roof from the road to your place. And the day he was there alone. And they said, where are the others? He said, I couldn't tell them. I am not telling them what to do. So this is the when you want to go hunting in a group, you just get up and you say, I'm going hunting. And if nobody joins you, nobody joins you. And if somebody wants to join you, he says, I will join you. Okay, good. Nobody tells anybody what to do. And this is...
no bosses. There's no bosses. Yeah. People spontaneously participate. Now, the other thing you've said that's interesting is what researchers have found and what you've seen is there's not a lot of time put into work. There's actually quite a bit of leisure time, and that the amount of time needed for hunting and gathering is actually either just a couple of hours a day, or you might hunt a week and then there's several weeks of leisure and playing with the kids. This is quite interesting. So how are they really able to sustain themselves with so little work compared to what we do?
This is actually the same with other carnivores. If you look at the Serengeti, okay, you look at the lions, they spend most of the time just lying down. Then they, from time to time, they get up, they go on a hunting trip, and they lie down again. So in general, carnivores are spending much less time obtaining food than herbivores. Herbivores, because the food is not high quality, contains a lot of fiber, they have to eat all the time. They have to pass, through their stomach a lot of food in order to get the nutrition. Carnivores less, and humans, which are at the top of the chain, spend even less, and they have the technology. So this is what allowed us to invest more in culture, in making tools, in the teaching, and transferring knowledge. So humans they don't work, but they're busy.
I think you've pointed out this is really one of the real striking aspects of mismatch, is that we evolved really working a fairly small amount of the time, at least work being defined as going after food or our sustenance, and we had all of this extra time for leisure, culture, social interaction. Today, that's not the case. Most people work at least 8 hours a day. Some people work more than that. Do you think that drives some of the health issues and social maladies that we have, the fact that we're so much chained to work?
Naturally, see, not only the time, but the hierarchy in work and the lack of autonomy. Professors don't resign that often because there's a lot of autonomy in being a professor once you reach the stage. On the way to professorship, you have to lick a lot of asses, but when you become a professor, your level of autonomy is so high that I think this is the best job in the world. And the system is also not that hierarchical, yeah? But hierarchical systems and lack of autonomy create stress. the capitalism is such that it organizes the work, it organizes in a way that they will get the maximum output out of you in the time that you devote to work. And in order to organize, because we are all specialized today, there's a very, very detailed division of labor. Everybody specializes in something. You need a lot of hierarchy to manage all that stuff, all the specializations.
So I think this is really interesting, and yet here we are in the modern Western world, dependent on technology, division of labor. It provides many benefits in terms of standard of living, healthcare. You can argue there, but there are some aspects there that really are beneficial. Infectious disease, for example, is controlled. We have access to things that our ancestors didn't. So there's benefits, but then you've pointed out we're giving up some of the benefits of autonomy, freedom, and social harmony. So how do we bring the best of our evolutionary origins in terms of social structure into a world that is specialized? Can we find a balance here? Is there a way to have both material abundance and high standard of living, but also the happiness and health and autonomy of our Paleolithic ancestors?
I must say that I don't have solutions for the world. I can only advise something that also may work and may not work for individuals. I'm a little humbler than I used to be in that respect. First of all, I must say that I met a lot of people who like their work and who like the life that they have and are happy. And so, I mean, who am I to tell them that they can be even happier? But I don't think they would. A lot of people that live their work. Now, I say, I didn't call the book, the book that you show is the English version of a Hebrew book that was written in Hebrew. And originally it was called Escaping to Paradise, or Sneaking into Paradise, which meant living work is the way to sneak into paradise, where you get your autonomy and you get your equality and you get... So my personal solution was to quit and to do what I want. I work very hard. I work 8 hours a day at least. Maybe some days I don't, but when I work very hard. But I work at something that I want, and something that I don't lose my autonomy. I have 100% autonomy. And nobody tells me what to do. So it's not the work itself, it's the situation. It's the situation. So professors,
it's the situation, and I think also the attitude. I'm somewhat like you. I work. I enjoy my work. I feel I have a lot of freedom and autonomy, but I still have to deliver. So I think some like you and me are fortunate to be able to do that. I'm just wondering, for the large, majority of the population, and because services and products have to be made, are there ways that we can build elements of this psychology into the lives of more people? Or is it always going to be just the lucky few, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are obvious, like build yourself a community. Build yourself a community of equals. Don't try to be friend with richer people, for instance. I have some rich friends, I used to have. I don't cultivate that friendship because I just don't feel comfortable. Sometimes I feel even intimidated in going to a house that is so posh I feel uncomfortable about it. So I have enough friends that are closer to me, economically speaking. Unless you know you have very special personality that that you can actually feel comfortable among these people, or they have a special personality that make you feel comfortable around them. But otherwise, try to be close. Try to create a tight-knit community. I live here in a building with about, I think there are about 300 apartments. And we have like maybe 6, 7 couples that we are friendly with and that we meet quite often. And this is the most important group that I have, because families are, my daughter lives in Victoria, in Canada, and my son doesn't live far away, but we don't see him that often. And now he wants to move to Cyprus. So so create yourself. You have to maintain. And I say, even sometimes, let's say they don't provide the most, the finest intellectual challenge, yeah, all your friends, but they're important. They're important, and they're important to meet people that you know, people that you feel comfortable to put your legs on the table if you want with. That's I think is very important.
Yeah, I think this is a really key point, and this goes back to the observation that we are naturally evolved to be in groups of 15 to 30 or 50 people. Right? It's a group of known people. They're familiar. That's your community. We can have different kinds of communities, the ones in your apartment that are local. We can have communities of interest like Ancestral Health Society, people we see on a regular basis. And this taps into this social nature that we have, right? And I think that that's our nature.
Community is very important.
Very
important. Sense of community, I think, for longevity, by the way, community is very important. I see in Israel, the religious people, they live a little bit longer. And I think it is because they have a sense of community.
Yeah, if you look at the blue zones, you know, in Japan or in Greece, very much those social groups, particularly as people age, they're sticking together, right? They're not isolated and lonely. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. The community. Yeah, some people try to argue that this is the fabulous plants that they eat, but this is BS. The community and the knowledge that they have, how to prepare food, etc., etc. This was the most important in their longevity. Yeah. Well, and another thing that I want, that I'm advocating in the book is spontaneity. Whenever you can. Don't plan, or you can plan a vacation a year in advance, of course, but try to get one that is like on a 2 days notice, if you have the opportunity to do it. So yeah, that's another thing that we miss compared to hunter-gatherer, the spontaneity. Spontaneity, by the way, is an expression of autonomy. If you're autonomous, you can be spontaneous. If you're not autonomous, if you have to go to work every day, 360 days, you cannot be spontaneous.
You know, there's one other thing you wrote in the book I thought was interesting, and that is, of course, you talk about paradise, but, you know, even in these hunter-gatherer societies, there were conflicts. There could even be big disagreements and some violence. And what you said that is what would happen. And when there were these divergences, the group could split. And they were nomadic. And so one way of resolving disagreements is move away, form a new group.
Absolutely, they move. If you look at the Hadza or the San, they move. They don't stay. I mean, not all of them move, but people just move. to a different. Sometimes because they want to be with their friends, and sometimes because they have some kind of argument.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's another interesting lesson is if you don't like the community you're in, change or split off.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, this has been a great discussion, Miki. Thank you for spending time talking about this today. And, I think you've taken so many different pieces and put them into a unifying picture. It really is compelling. And yet you're modest about it. You're not saying you have all the answers. There are people with different views, but still, I think you make pretty good arguments, very persuasive ones. And you're always writing papers. The research isn't done. So can you tell the audience listening today, what are the projects you're working on now? What are some of the pieces of the puzzle that you're pursuing today?
Yeah, I have this theory paper that I published in 2021 that says what I said. It is that it's a unified theory or hypothesis that most of our evolution is due to the decline, coping with the decline in prey size. So this compels me to test the theory by first of all proving that prey did decline, because like I said, there is a consensus about the recent decline, but I'm talking about a decline that happened, started maybe 1 million years ago. And this is something that people don't know, don't realize. Some of them don't believe it. Some of them don't know about it. So this is something that I have to sort of investigate. Okay, if I was right about an early decline. And then I have to prove the connection. And then so most of my work is geared toward, and this is the last paper that I'm very excited about. It was not published yet. Let's see. Some papers are difficult to publish because, there is in science is a social endeavor. So you have a lot of gatekeepers and a lot of people that with all kind of interests and et cetera, and all kind of. So some ideas are more difficult to publish than others. And I don't know how easy it will be for me to publish that, but that theory or hypothesis that humans were the one who were responsible not only for the late Quaternary extinction, but for the earlier extinctions that I'm finding in other places. And why? Because of our dependence on fat, we are the instigator of these extinctions.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing some of these publications coming out. It's amazing you're staying active in this, and I think this is one of the factors that probably drives your longevity, is this passion and continued interest. So, yeah, great. Well, anyway, thanks for talking today, and
nice
look
talking
forward
to
to seeing you at future conferences.
I tell you, you're a very high-class interviewer. Yeah, really. I mean, I did a lot of podcasts, and you must be one of the best. So it was a pleasure.
Well, you're too kind. I've enjoyed having you on. I always learn a lot every time we talk. So take care.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Ancestral Health Today. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on how evolutionary insights can inform modern health practices. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast to catch future episodes.